Florida Matters Live and Local, I'll sit down with Anthony and talk about his priorities for the city, what he's learned from browsing the city's down-to-earth eateries. And you can weigh in with questions and comments for Anthony. Call 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Also this hour, Florida Polytechnic University is kicking off a collegiate athletics program. The Lakeland-based university says it will boost team spirit. What do you think? We'll also recap the legislative session that just ended and what's left on lawmakers' to-do list. And Tampa author Rachel Knox goes deep into the cultural heart of Florida with her Sunshine State memoir, Anywhere Else. All this and your calls and emails coming up after the snooze.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. We are now more than 2 weeks into a war with Iran. President Trump and his aides are doubling down on the narrative that the U.S. is winning. Trump is working to promote an image of strength against the backdrop of climbing U.S. gas prices, heavy market volatility, and polls consistently suggesting people are questioning the wisdom of a war that could last longer than the administration initially projected. NPR's Frank Ordonez traveled with the president over the weekend in Florida.
Trump is very attuned to the politics of the moment. He can see the polls. He can see how the split among his own supporters who are concerned about this dragging on. And Trump also knows how to employ a strong yet simple language and kind of repeating it over and over again as a rebranding tool.
NPR's Frank Ordonez. Germany is among several developed countries rejecting President Trump's demand to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. NPR's Rob Schmitz has more from Berlin.
President Trump has called on NATO allies in Europe to protect the shipping lane, crucial to providing oil and gas to countries throughout the world. But Stefan Cornelius, a spokesman for German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, says the war has nothing to do with NATO and that for its part, Germany would not help secure the Strait of Hormuz. NATO, said Cornelius, is a defensive alliance for its territory. As the war enters its third week, Iran continues to maintain its stranglehold over the strait. Germany's foreign minister also called on the U.S. and Israel to, quote, clarify when they consider the military objectives of their operation to be achieved. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
In a sign of how the war against Iran is spreading, airlines are starting to add fuel surcharges to ticket prices. NPR's Bill Chappell has more.
The 75% jump is a huge spike in one of air carriers' biggest expenses, and their customers will eventually absorb some of that increase, says Sean Cudahy of the Points Guy website.
Consumers purchasing tickets for the summer will likely feel it. It's just a matter of when and how significant.
He recommends locking in an airfare now and making sure you can change the ticket.
You can also set alert so you get an alert every time the price changes.
But Cudahy adds for international travel, with thousands of flights canceled since the war started, it can be tough to avoid airline hubs in the Middle East, which are some of the busiest in the world. Bill Chappell, NPR News.
2 members of the Iranian women's soccer team are staying behind in Australia, where a top government official says they've been relocated to an undisclosed safe location. 5 other players and a support staff member had dropped their bid for asylum and as of Monday night were flying to Oman and possibly back to Iran. Concerns have been raised about the women's safety back in Iran. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 386 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. Attorney General James Othmeyer says Tampa Mayor Jane Castor can be removed if the police department doesn't revise its policies. Othmeyer says sanctuary policies are preventing police from sharing immigration status of victims or witnesses to a crime. But state law says that information doesn't have to be provided to federal agents if the victim or witness is necessary to an investigation and is cooperating. Art Rios teaches immigration at Stetson University. He says reporting immigration status in the event of a crime could jeopardize public safety.
You're taking away any sort of safety that a person may feel in reporting crimes.
Tampa police say they are reviewing their policies. Florida's legislative session ended on Friday as scheduled, but like last year, lawmakers didn't get the budget done. Senate President Ben Albritton points out the gap between the House and Senate budgets is less this year.
A lot of great investments in that budget. Did it take a little more time? Sure it did. And I believe that we're going to do the same thing this time. No, sir, I do not believe voters should be upset that the timeline has been at least traditionally altered.
Lawmakers are planning a mid-April special session to focus on the budget. There's already a special session called for late April for potential redistricting, and legislative leadership says there are still plans to create a November ballot amendment to reduce property taxes. The USF men's basketball team is going to the NCAA tourney for the first time in 14 years. The Bulls won the American Athletic Conference tournament Sunday, knocking off Wichita State 70-55. USF, which has an 11-game winning streak, will be the number 11 seed when they take on number 6 Louisville in Buffalo at 1:30 Thursday afternoon. You can find links to the brackets for both the men's and women's tournaments, including all the men's games in Tampa, at WUSF.org. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
I'm Amy Tardif, your Florida editor. How do those in power affect you? The WUSF Your Florida team explains state policy and answers your questions on air, online, and on social media.
Urbanite Theater in Sarasota presents The Apiary. Named a New York Times Critics' Pick, The Apiary is a provocative comedy about sacrifice and the ethics of discovery. March 20th through April 19th. For tickets, visit urbanitetheater.com.
This is Florida Matters live and local, sponsored by Badawi Law and broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WUSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, you all know that spiny spaceship-looking building off the side of I-4. That's Florida Polytechnic University, one of the top STEM schools in the country. But they are looking to expand their resume by bringing college athletics to campus. Here to talk more about it today is Catherine Smith. She's a sports reporter at Bay News 9. Catherine, thanks so much for stopping by.
Anytime.
So this is a final decision, right? Sports is definitely coming to Florida Poly officially.
Officially. And I love that you mentioned the spiny structure. It kind of looks like a football. You would think that football was played there.
I always think of it more as kind of like a beached like skeleton of some prehistoric animal or something.
Something died there.
Yeah, right.
But they are bringing sports. They're going to start with men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball, men's and women's soccer, and cross country. We won't see football yet, but that's kind of hard to get started. You need a lot of players for football. But it's going to be exciting for the campus. I think when you are a polytechnic or one of the high academic universities, you are competing for dollars. And one way to separate yourself is what kind of extracurriculars do you offer? What kind of athletics do you offer? Well, now they'll be able to offer that. And also, I think it gives a full campus experience for the students that are already there. You know, I went to the University of Florida, and my fondest memories are not in the classroom. I'm sure some people do have some really good memories in the classroom, but mine are going to games, going to football games, going to basketball games. So I think it'll give the students at Polytechnic just a full-rounded college experience.
So, but am I hearing you say that it's a way to bring more money into the school eventually?
Absolutely. When you look at, I think of the University of Alabama. University of Alabama's enrollment went up tremendously. Why? Sororities.
Oh, really?
It became such a social media thing that people, girls wanted to go to the University of Alabama because of these very popular sororities on social media. So you kind of have to find ways to differentiate yourself from these other universities, and ways to do that is athletics. And also there'll be some scholarship opportunities for student athletes. It's an NIA school. They'll start out as an NIA. They're going to compete in the Sun Conference. But so their scholarships aren't like what you normally would get at a Division I. There'll be some grant opportunities available. But we have a lot of kids in this area that play these sports.
Okay.
That it could give them a road to a full ride.
Okay, so just for people who aren't following this as closely as you are, Catherine, can you kind of break down what the hierarchy is? So you've got an NIA school. What is that, and how does it sort of fit into the other college athletics?
I think when a lot of people think of college sports, it's Division I. You think of the Floridas, the Alabamas. Of course, I'm saying all these SEC schools because I'm an SEC girl. But you think of the Division I schools, and then you have Division II, and then you get down to the NIA. So their enrollment's smaller. We have junior colleges, and now in this day and age of NIL. where you
Name,
can make
image, and
money.
likeness, right.
You can make
Yeah.
money. These are great ways to differentiate yourself through sports at the college level, and it's getting harder to do that in Division I. We have athletes in our area who 5-6 years ago would have been given full rides to Division I schools that are not getting them now because of the way recruiting is happening. And it's happening because of NILs. You have athletes that are going to colleges, maybe staying 1 year and transferring. The transfer portal has changed everything.
So how does that affect, this may be a little bit of a sidebar, but how does that affect scholarships? Is it schools are saying, well, we can't run the risk that you may not stick around, therefore we're not going to put up the money?
It's more than just the risk of the money. It's the risk. I don't want to develop you. I don't want to, because you're going to be, all these kids that are entering the transfer portal. We had over 4,500 student athletes, to football alone, enter the transfer portal last year. So schools that are spending big money on these athletes are like, you know what? I'm not going to take you right out of college because I don't want to develop you. I'm going to get you out of the transfer portal because you've already been at a college. You've already been developed. I can get you that way.
Right. So they don't want to put the money in, develop these athletes, and then have them poached by a school with more money.
Absolutely. And you see that a lot.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking sports at Florida Poly with Bay News 9 sports reporter Catherine Smith. Maybe you're a parent or a student or an alumni or alumnus. How do you think this will change the university? Give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So you talked about some of the sports that are going to be considered. We've got soccer, cross country, baseball, basketball, softball. So what do they need to do to get these programs up and running?
They need bodies. And that's where the recruiting starts. You're going to have some coaches that are going to start looking. You can recruit just your backyard in Polk County. When you look at the Polk County high schools, every year, every sport that is mentioned, Polk County has a team in the state championship game. In fact, the Winter Haven girls basketball team just lost in the state championship game. They were defending their title and they lost. They finished runner-up. So just recruiting your own backyard. There's a lot of athletes in Polk County. There's a lot of talent in the state of Florida. And when you've got a lot of these kids who are high academics, that are high achievers, that want to continue to play sports, this might be a great option for them because you're going to get a really good education at a really good school and then also continue to play sports.
And what about where they play? Like, presumably they have some of the grounds already because they are actually playing some sports there, right? It's just not part of the
They have intramurals. Intramurals. They're going to have to build some stadium. You're going to have to build a soccer stadium. They might have to use some high schools for a while. And we saw that with Southeastern that opened up in Lakeland. They had to use some high schools for a while, but now they have a really nice facility that actually attracts a lot of tournaments. So that's another thing that, a sidebar to that is you could bring in some tournaments that could bring some more money into the university.
Right, but the school is going to have to put down some money to get these venues up and running.
Absolutely. But I got to tell you, sports, people love to dig into their pockets for sports.
Yeah. Okay, so when are we actually going to see some of these games kick off?
In the fall. In the fall, they will start playing.
Okay, and I think it's men's and women's soccer, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much interest is there in soccer then at this level?
Oh, well, at this level, it's high. But when you look at youth sports in this area, soccer is one of the most attended. Like, you will see a ton of kids playing youth soccer. We don't have Premier League here in the United States, so we don't get that kind of fanaticism around soccer. I think the closest we get to Premier League soccer fanaticism is college football.
Really?
In the South, but it's not the same. Like, if you have ever attended a Premier or just watched a Premier League game, from the moment that game starts, those fans are invested. They are into it. You hear them throughout the entire game. You sort of get that with college football in certain pockets of the country.
What about MLS, though? I mean, there's some pretty rabid fans.
There's some rabid
MLS.
fans. I know Seattle has a really good following. Miami, because they've got Messi, has a really good following. But I don't think you see the live and die by that team like you do. Like Premier League, it's a whole other level of fanaticism.
I'm sure, a college that's launching, a program like this, they obviously have their eyes down the road on something like what you were describing. They would love to have that kind of buy-in from fans. But it's going to take a while to sort of build that up. So what do you know about, how they're going to plan to go about building up this college athletics program?
I think it all depends on the student life. When you get your students involved, when you look at USF here, when I saw the beginning of the season for the men's basketball team and how it ended, and you saw more fans coming to their games, now they're in the NCAA tournament for the first time in forever. I think if you get the students on board, get them involved, and that's all of your student groups. It's going to take some politicking, going around and getting people, hey, show up for our games. We need some fans in the stands. We need some butts in the seats. So I think it's all going to depend on, the student life and whether they really buy in.
Mm-hmm. And this, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this is like the last public college university in Florida to get a collegiate athletics program?
Are they the last? Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because I know Warner has it, Southeastern, Ave Maria. Ave Maria actually has football. So, and that could be down the road. You could see football at it. And when you are a college in a football state, I could see football, but you're going to have to add flag football too, because any amount of men you have on a roster, you've got to counter that with the women for Title IX. But flag football is one of the fastest growing sports in the country. So I could see where there would be, a lot of interest in that too. Yeah.
And I think flag football, there's going to be some growing interest. We learned from another guest on a show a couple of weeks ago that it's going to be one of the demonstration games in the Olympics. Summer Olympics in a few years.
So is cheerleading.
Right, yeah. Okay, so that sort of plays into that interest. They could sort of maybe coast on that a little bit.
Also, and look at the free advertising that the university is going to get. When you talk about branding and getting your name out there, when we've got the Final Four that's starting, March Madness is starting, we have first and second round games here in Tampa. The amount of exposure that those universities get on national TV, that is free advertising. The amount of exposure they get on social media, that's free advertising. So if you can get these sports up and going and really get some interest on social media through television, you're really going to, sell your university.
Catherine, in the last 30 seconds or so we have here, I mean, you know athletes and sports pretty well. How does being an athlete contribute to kind of who you are as a person?
Oh, it's everything. When you play sports, you learn so much about life that you don't know you're learning at the moment, but they're life lessons you're going to apply later on. Just attended an event with the Bucks. She is football. They had all these CEOs, female CEOs. 90% of female CEOs in the nation played a sport.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's very telling because I think you learn a lot about yourself through sports.
All right. Sounds like the advertising for this is writing itself. We've been speaking with Catherine Smith, sports reporter at Bay News 9. Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your expertise as always. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, coming up next, we're checking in with the Your Florida team. Well, actually, Douglas Soul with Your Florida WUSF for our weekly legislative update, the last one for the regular legislative session. That's on Florida Matters Live and Local. Stay with us.
Shorecrest Preparatory School is a nationally recognized pre-K through 12th grade school in the Tampa Bay region with signature programs in medical sciences, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. Visit shorecrest.org. Van Wezel presents Celtic Angels. Get swept away in the enchanting harmonies and rhythms of the Celtic Angels and the Celtic Night Dancers in this journey through the history of the Emerald Isle. Tuesday, March 17th. Tickets at vanwezel.org.
Start the new year with clarity. Your $20 monthly gift strengthens fact-based reporting right here in West Central Florida and keeps trusted news accessible to everyone. In a year when our community needs reliable information more than ever, you can help lead the way. Begin your new year as a new member at WUSF.org, and thank you.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7, your spot for local.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. The Florida legislature adjourned this past Friday without passing a budget, but plenty of bills were passed. Joining us to tell us more is Douglas Soul with the Your Florida team at WUSF. Douglas, thank you so much for being with us.
It's good to be on.
So the session wrapped up without doing the one thing they have to do, which is pass a budget. How did the session end, and why weren't they able to get that budget passed?
Yeah, I mean, you identified a pretty significant thing, which was the inability of lawmakers on the House and Senate sides to overcome around $1.5 billion differences between the House and Senate budgets. I can tell you this, the chambers were not really even trying at the last few weeks to figure out a compromise. I think there was kind of a mindset going into the final stretch that this was going to have to be figured out in a special session after the regular session ends, and that's obviously proven to be the case. Lawmakers say they're going to come back in mid-April to bridge that $1.5 billion difference between the plans.
Okay, well, let's just hear a little bit from what House lawmakers had to say. Here's what Florida House Democratic leader Fentress Driscoll of Tampa had to say.
This was too much talk and too little action, and that's a missed opportunity for the people of Florida. Instead, this is a session that's been marked by infighting within the Republican Party, but it just causes the people of Florida to lose out, and that's not fair.
And then here's Senate President Ben Olberson, Republican, defending the process.
Are there things that we disagree on? Absolutely, right? We're two separate chambers, but I still believe that we're gonna get the plane landed. It will be timely.
Well, it's interesting to hear Senate President Ben Olberson saying it will be timely, because clearly it isn't timely if you haven't actually passed your budget at the end of the regular session. I mean, do we know when this special session is going to happen?
Yeah. So the special session is expected to happen in mid-April, and listeners may recall that this isn't actually hugely new, because just last year, the Florida lawmakers did not complete the budget by the end of the 60-day regular session as well. Unlike last year, when they decided to, instead of a special session, they just decided to extend the regular session. This time they decided to end it formally and officially on Friday and just to come back in a few weeks' time to hammer out those final details. But I think also one of the points Senate President Albritton is making is that technically lawmakers don't have to do this until July 1st, which is when, if they don't do it, they enter into a partial government shutdown. Still, of course, there's a lot of angst and anger heard from some people, especially the Democrats, about the inability to finish on time. But certainly, a few months to go until it becomes perilous.
Yeah, we might have talked about this last year, actually, Douglas, when they were still trying to hammer out the details of that budget and that extended 45 days or so. But what would happen in a partial government shutdown? Is that something you've seen or witnessed or reported on before?
That's never happened in the history of Florida. So some of the exact details, I don't think anyone truly knows. Certainly, there would still be essential workers working in some capacities, but there would also be a number of people pretty important in the government not working and not getting paid. Now, that becomes a true concern if we were to enter June, for example, as we did last year, and not have a budget done. Another difference between these sessions is last year the session started 2 months later than it did this year, because it was an off election year. So there's 2 months more wiggle room this time around. And Senate President Ben Olberton just emphasizes that they need to take the time to get it right.
There is another special session, though, in the offing, right? I think you might have mentioned this. This would be for property taxes, or is it redistricting, or is it a bit of both?
Great question. So there is already a Ron DeSantis called for a special session in late April for potential redistricting. Now, that's going to be really, really interesting, because Governor DeSantis, his huge basis on why they need to do redistricting is to adjust to a expected Supreme Court ruling on a Louisiana voting rights case. With the conservative U.S. Supreme Court, I think he's expecting a ruling that would be conducive to Florida adding Republicans to the congressional map. But as the days tick by and the weeks go by and the months go by, I'm not certain that Supreme Court ruling is going to come by late April. So I don't really know how they're going to adapt to that. The state constitution prevents political gerrymandering and redistricting for political reasons. And if the basis isn't fulfilled by then, I don't know what justification they're going to find, or if they're going to find one. And separately, you mentioned property tax. Going into the session, we kind of expected there to be a proposal to reduce the property tax put on the 2026, that is, November ballot. That wasn't done, but Governor Ron DeSantis, early in the process, said that he wanted to do something in a special session in the spring, and legislative leadership now says that we should expect there to be some proposal created in a special session. Now, we don't know when that's going to be yet, and that's something we're going to expect to hear in the coming weeks, if not maybe a little bit later. But so we're looking at 2, maybe 3 special sessions coming in the next several months.
Yeah, and bear in mind, a lot of these lawmakers will be busy campaigning, right? We're in an election year, so they're going to have quite a lot on their plate too. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Douglas Soul with WUSF. He's with the Your Florida team, breaking down what's happening in Tallahassee and what that means for you and your neighbors across the state. Let's just talk quickly about some of the bills that were passed. One, a local government DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion ban. Just in broad strokes, what does that do?
Yeah, so that bill would ban local governments from funding, carrying out, and even promoting diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. Democrats are very, very unhappy with this. They warn it's going to affect even the economies of local governments that have a lot of tourism and business revenue come in from various diversity promoting events. They also say diversity, equity, inclusion is something that they should be able to promote. So that was one of the hugely contentious bills. When this bill passed both chambers, it was hours long of conversation, especially on the Senate side. It went more than a half a day, I think.
Huh. Wow. And then there's a lot of things that got left on the cutting room floor. One of them lowering the gun buying age to 18 years old. What happened with that one?
Yeah, so listeners might recall this, but lawmakers up the long gun buying age, the age to buy rifles and shotguns from 18 to 21, following the Parkland shooting. And in recent years, though, some lawmakers are saying that shouldn't have been done. Governor Ron DeSantis, for example, has very loudly called for them to lower that age back to 18, citing the Second Amendment. And the House, over the last several years, has passed a bill lowering the age, but the Senate, under the former Senate President Kathleen Passidomo, and now under Senate President Ben Albritton, have been resistant to that idea. So that passed the House again, did not get considered by the Senate.
Yeah, okay. Well, Douglas, sounds like there's quite a lot on your agenda, on your to-do list too. Unfortunately, the end of the session doesn't mean you can take a breather. You basically got to refuel and get back into it pretty soon. But Douglas Soul with WSF's Your Florida team, covering Tallahassee and making it easily understandable, more easily understandable, I should say, for the rest of us. Thank you so much for your reporting. Really appreciate it.
No, always happy to talk about it with you.
Well, coming up next, you may know Anthony Gilbert from his food reviews, where he tries different convenience store restaurants and other interesting places that are sometimes overlooked in the culinary landscape. Well, he's running to be the next mayor of Tampa, and he joins us next. And you can call in as well, the number 813-755-6562. If you've got questions for Anthony, thoughts about the state of Tampa and what you would like to see in the next mayor. 813-755-6562. That's when Florida Matters live and local continues. Stay with us.
Residents across the greater Tampa Bay region are adapting their homes to flooding.
We're actually doing tile that looks like wood. This way when it floods, we don't need to touch it. We'll still have to do with the drywall.
I'm Jessica Mazzaros, climate reporter for WUSF. From emergency info to storm recovery, we've got you covered every hurricane season and beyond.
Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at BadawiLaw.com, or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law. Experience hits like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Will Rock You in an unforgettable fusion of music and visuals with Queen Heaven in the Dolly Dome. It's Florida's only 360-degree show celebrating the iconic rock band. Tickets and info at thedolly.org/queen.
This is WUSF, your spot for local news.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Tampa's mayoral election is a little less than a year away, and before the election day, March 2nd, 2027, we are inviting candidates onto the show to talk about why they want to be the next mayor of Tampa. About 10 candidates so far have either filed or expressed interest in running. One of them is Belmont Heights native Anthony Gilbert. You might know him from his wildly popular food review channel on Instagram at Call Anthony. Anthony, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for the invite.
And if you've got questions for Anthony, you can call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Maybe you've got some thoughts in general about the state of Tampa and what you would like to see in the next mayor. You can also email FloridaMatters at WUSF.org. So, I mean, Anthony, you review culinary delicacies in the area like hibachi cooked in a trunk. Why do you want to be the next mayor of Tampa?
Well, I just want to be a part of the upcoming change that Tampa needs. I've been here all my life. I'm 42 years old. I've seen when Tampa was dirt roads, basically, and now the infrastructure is just growing so fast. I've been living in these underserved communities my whole life, so I see a lot that can be done there. I just want to be a part of that change that's going to be the next Tampa, which is the biggest city that's up and coming in Florida right now.
Tell us a little bit about your platform. What are you focused on?
So my platform is wide range, but majority the infrastructure, the youth development in the community, community stuff like making sure that these underserved communities don't always continue to be overlooked. And I just want to be that guy that's there, that's been in the community, boots on the ground, shaking hands with everybody and actually understanding what Tampa wants and needs as a person that's lived here.
When you talk to folks, when you're, say, reviewing one of these restaurants, like, does the conversation kind of get into like, okay, we're in this community, here's some things that we think could be fixed, here's what we like about it?
Yes, most definitely. So going into these places, majority everyone always tells you like, okay, thanks for coming here. I appreciate you coming. Thanks for highlighting my place. Why does it always pass us when big events come to the city? Or why is it so hard for us to get a general license just to open up? Why does it cost so much just to start our business? A lot of these places can't afford all of the fees and everything that comes with just trying to start a business, and I feel like the small businesses in the community is what actually makes Tampa grow. That local economy is very important. So that's why I like to highlight a lot of these local mom and pop places.
Yeah. You talked about infrastructure. Can you be a little more specific? Like when you say there's some work that needs to be done on infrastructure, are you talking about like roads, schools?
Yeah.
What kind of things?
It's the roads. We got buildings going up every day in Tampa. The amount of people that's moving here daily doesn't match the infrastructure of the way the roads are being able to be maneuvered. Like we need dedicated lanes for buses and dedicated lanes for ride sharing. People's commute back and forth to work is getting a lot more hard now because it's just so much traffic, so much construction. And I don't think that the community is being involved enough into these decisions on when these buildings go up. What can they do to, accommodate the people that actually live in these areas and make sure that the infrastructure that they want to build matches the traditional Tampa staple that these people have in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and that they want to keep that, that family structure smooth and transitional for everybody.
Do you ride the bus in Tampa?
I ride it occasionally just to see how it works, and it's a very bad bus system. It's long wait times. People are normally on there just complaining about not getting to work on time. It's not enough buses. The buses themselves could use a lot of maintenance. It's not really a good system that really should work the way it should work.
So how do you normally get around Tampa?
I drive. Yeah, I drive, and the potholes that are in Tampa are outrageous. There should be a dedicated, something just dedicated to potholes. A pothole line, because there's so many potholes, and it just takes the city.
Pothole?
I'm telling you, something like that, because it's
there is actually something like that. We did a series on Temple Terrace and how they actually have a kind of call and you fix it line. But
but those lines don't work as they should. You could call, and they'll get to it in about a month or two or three, and by that time, a lot of people done hit it, messed their car up, and now you got another bill that you have to pay. Then they give you this line to call the city for help, and that never works. So a lot of those breakdowns, could be a little more dedicated staff to just work on particular things instead of just throwing everything in a pot and just saying, hey, let's just see what bubbles out first, and we'll go, attack that.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Anthony Gilbert. He's a food influencer in Tampa, running to be the next mayor of Tampa. If you've got questions for Anthony, maybe some ideas about things that you think work well in the city, things you think could use some help, give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. So you're a native son of Tampa. You're from East Tampa, right?
Yes, born and raised right here in Tampa.
What do you love about it?
I just love the diversity of the community, man. It's so many different cultures here. The people are very nice in Tampa. I would say there's a little divide between, East Tampa, South Tampa, and I wouldn't say it because of the people. It's just because I feel East Tampa has been just overlooked when it comes to, just revamping the place, making it look good, putting some of the tax dollars into the communities that, they need something in these communities to look up to, So I always tell people, imagine going outside and you see, a pretty building, right? So you're kind of uplifted. Oh, that looks nice. Oh, nice day. But then on the other end, imagine going outside and then every building around you is just ran down. It's like.
Do you feel like Tampa is like that, or certain parts of the city are like that?
Most definitely, I feel like that. I highlight a lot of the places and just showing the difference of where the city dollars go. A lot of places. I mean, you could just ride from. You could cross one road in Tampa where you'll see a divide, right? You could be on one side of town, and as soon as you cross to the next road, the next 100 blocks are just nothing, ran down. People outside just trying to survive. It's like.
So are you saying you think the city isn't doing a good job of kind of dividing the resources equitably, or at least putting resources into places that need some help?
Yes, sir. That's exactly it. And the resources are there, but it's the way that, in my eyes, it's the way that the districts are combined together, right? So East Tampa, for instance, I always talk East Tampa because I grew up there and I've seen it for the last 42 years. So East Tampa, for instance, is combined with Channelside, downtown, and then you got East Tampa, Belmont Heights, those Jackson Heights, all those areas. So when the money comes in for District 5, most of the money goes to the Channelsides, to the downtowns, and the crumbs come over to East Tampa.
Have you actually sort of taken a look at how the budget is divvied up like that, though?
Yes. You could see the disparities on how much they spend in South Tampa, how much they spend in Channelside, to how much they spend in East Tampa. And a lot of it does relate back to the tax income that's coming in, because a lot of people in East Tampa are renters. Not a lot of homeowners there, not a bunch of $1 million homes. But at the same time, the budget should be broken down in a way that the Tampa is reflected the same everywhere, and I want to be a part of that change.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Anthony Gilbert. He's a candidate for mayor of Tampa, talking about things like potholes, infrastructure, kinds of things that Anthony would like to address if he's elected mayor. If you've got some ideas for what you want to see in the city of Tampa, how you think the next leader of the city could address those things, give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. I mean, people know you as a food reviewer, right? So
Yes.
Some people might look at that and say, look, is this a logical next step for somebody to go from that to being the mayor of Tampa? But for listeners who maybe aren't so familiar with that, tell us a little bit about the work that you do as a food reviewer.
Most definitely. I get that a lot, honestly. So how do you think you're going to be a food reviewer and then you want to be the mayor? To me, it goes hand in hand because I'm actually in the community. I'm going to restaurants. I'm hearing from real people. I talk with people daily about, what's the problems, how to survive in Tampa, seeing the different things, even seeing how people's stomach guides their brain. So if you could trust someone with your stomach, why can't you trust them with something else? What you eat is what builds you. So if you could trust someone with what you eat, you could trust someone with helping in other areas that can be helped with. So, I mean, I don't have any political background. I've never been in politics a day in my life.
Do you vote?
I do vote. But I feel that's kind of an advantage for me. I'm not coming in with any special ties. I don't have special ties, special interests, or anything. I'm here to make sure that the people of Tampa get what the people of Tampa want. The voice of the people is really what matters. So I like to listen. I'm a listener, and I want to be a problem solver. So the only way to solve problems is to know the exact problems.
There's going to be some stiff competition, though, right? I mean, former Mayor Bob Buckhorn has raised some pretty serious money, nearly $1.5 million so far. Hasn't formally announced anything yet, but, I mean, what are your thoughts about what you'll be up against?
Well, I kind of look at that as like everybody got to do their own thing. I mean, I never was one to worry about competition or what someone else has going on. I just always have that straight focus on what my agenda is and what I plan to do. And he's most definitely got a lot of money sitting to the side, but like we all know, most of that, if you look at it, come from big developers and stuff like that. And that's kind of the issue, I feel, is why the city is kind of in the state where it's in now, because the payola game, the residents' thoughts don't matter, but long as the developers are good and the buddies are good, a lot of people just say, okay, whatever. But I feel like that's one of the issues that need to change. We need someone in office that knows the people of Tampa, that cares for what they want, and that's going to listen and be there. They're going to be walking the neighborhoods. They're going to see firsthand what's going on, talking to the people, not just relying on a news article or what someone else has to say about something.
Let me get a caller on here. We've got Margaret standing by. Margaret, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. My thought is that many developing countries that I've traveled to extensively use small minibuses or vans even to transport people locally, and it's a much more efficient use of a vehicle space, and it's much more conservative with gas consumption. And I just think you could have more routes and make people happier rather than these big voluminous buses that are mostly empty all the time.
So you want to see that in Tampa?
I would love to see that all over the place, in big cities, because in many, I'm a retired Spanish teacher, so many Latin American countries employ this. Then they have more frequent lines running and stops, and it's like sometimes other countries do it better than us.
Margaret, thank you for your call. Appreciate that. What about that, Anthony? Some creative solutions there to transportation?
That's most definitely a great idea, because you would be able to have a bigger fleet of vehicles. They can maneuver better. You can make dedicated lanes just for these vehicles without taking up so much of the space in the roads. And like she said, a lot of other countries implement a lot of things that I feel if we use here in America, specifically in Tampa, we could definitely improve the traffic and the transportation system for the public.
All right, well, there's a ways to go before the election. Last 20 seconds or so here, though. What's your pitch to voters?
My pitch is, I just want everybody to just follow along, and if you align with what I align with, which is for the people of Tampa, that's all I ask for. I'm not coming in with any special interests or ties. Like I said, my main goal is to serve the people of Tampa and to be the next great mayor of this great city. As we grow, we will grow together. Together is better.
Well, Anthony Gilbert, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate being here.
Well, coming up next on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're going to sit down with author Rachel Knox and talk about her new memoir. Anywhere Else, it's a collection of essays about Florida. That's when Florida Matters Live and Local continues. Stay with us for that.
I'm Peter O'Dowd.
I've been all over this world. I seen men die in ways I ain't even know was possible.
Sinners, Hamnet, K-pop Demon Hunters. We'll review the winners, losers, and who got overlooked at the Academy Awards. Next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Have you ever been so wrapped up in an interview on WUSF that you were late for a meeting because you couldn't stop listening? You can listen anywhere with the WUSF app. It's seamless, so you can go from home to the car to the beach to soccer, anywhere, and not miss a thing. Stay connected to the ideas that grip you. Download the WUSF app. Your spot for local, wherever you are.
Funding for WUSF comes from listeners like you, and also Seitenbacher, with a new web shop, healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com, Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7, your spot for local.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Born and raised in Tampa Bay, Rachel Knox knows the Bay Area better than most, perhaps. The rest of the Sunshine State has its own reputation, from true crimes, spring break in Miami, serial killers, beach bums. The state has been deemed the armpit of American oddities. Rachel draws on her own experience and Florida's endless lore in her new book, Anywhere Else, Essays on Florida. She currently teaches writing at the University of South Florida and is a bookseller at Tombolo Books in St. Petersburg. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And you can join in the conversation too if you've got your own Florida stories or can relate to Rachel about understanding the place you grew up. Join in the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or emailing FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. All right, so I wonder if you could read, just to kind of set our listeners up, from page 5. There's a passage where you kind of explain sort of part of why I think you wanted to write this book.
Sure. The whole time I lived in New York, I missed Florida dearly. Wanted to brag about it, to show others its good side, to describe the way the sky looks during one of our $1 million sunsets. I wanted to make everyone who chuckled sit down at the edge of a dock, eat a Cuban sandwich, and wash it down with a cold beer or rum runner. I wanted to walk with them through a silent pine forest in the early morning, looking for scrub jays. I wanted to take them mudding, to the rodeo, to the fish fry on the corner, the lighthouses dotting the coasts, down the cobblestone streets of St. Augustine, America's oldest city, where a gust of salt air and a squint of the eyes might make you believe you're in Seville 500 years ago. To steer them down Crystal River in the spring when the manatees swarm and bump up against your kayak with whiskered noses, and then challenge them. Try to tell me now that this place is a joke.
All right. So what I loved about this passage was it's kind of like you're pushing back against this notion of, Florida as a punchline. You write that pretty explicitly, like this, the people I know, the places I love, these are not punchlines. So what was it that sort of made you compelled to write this particular collection of essays?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was leaving Florida. I grew up here and then moved away to New York to try to go back to school, become a writer, live my life. I thought I needed to leave Florida to do that. And I noticed that whenever I would tell people I was from Florida, they kind of responded with a joke or with a laugh, or, they had heard our Florida Man headlines or had these wacky ideas about what the place was. And it always kind of made me a little angry. Why are we the butt of the joke? And when I looked to the existing books about Florida, I found a lot of fiction, a lot of great fiction, but not a lot of memoir that I felt really showed the true experience of being a Floridian, the more complicated or dark or challenging parts of being from this very unique place.
Did you read a lot of, were you reading a lot of essayists and memoirists kind of coming up as a writer as you were sort of developing your craft?
Yeah, I've always loved memoir and nonfiction. Falling in love with writers like Mary Karr. Her great book, The Liars Club, which is set in East Texas, was really a touchstone for me. similarly tackling issues of what it means to be from a complicated place. And she grew up maybe in a similar situation. And writers like Annie Ernaux and women who really put a lot of themselves on the page. I always felt that would be a good lens to approach such a complicated place like Florida, was just through the individual experience.
And so did you always think like, okay, this will be the first book that I publish, it'll be a collection of essays?
No, not at all. In fact, I kind of always thought I was going to be a food writer. That was my original kind of goal. I worked in restaurants and bars for decades, and that's kind of what I originally went to school for. But I started realizing that all of the things I was writing about were connected in some way to the way that I had grown up and kind of the lens I viewed the world through, which to me is a little inseparable from Florida. And anytime I would write about Florida, people had a lot to say and a lot of big reactions. And I thought, I think there's something there. I think I need to explore that a little more.
So, as you say, you grew up in Florida, but, there was a point at which you're like, I can't wait to get out of here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, which I think that's common. It doesn't matter whether you're from Florida or anywhere. Sometimes you just need to get out and see the world, and that can help you, as you say, kind of get a sense of where it is you come from. You can't tell until you leave it and you see it from afar.
Yeah, I think it's a very common, especially teenage feeling. When I was a young person, especially, I was like, I've just got to get out of here, And to me, it always felt like New York was the place that I wanted to go. It took me a little bit of time to actually get there. But yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of just wanting to know what life is like outside of your own kind of bubble. In this case, Florida is a very unique bubble to be from. Finding my way back has been a really interesting experience. I'm glad to be here now, but it's definitely a complicated relationship.
Yeah. I was interested too. I mean, there's kind of little Easter eggs in each of these essays, like the title of the intro is a reference, I think, to like there was a state flag or an unofficial state flag at some point, which had this kind of fairly prickly kind of motto as part of it.
Yeah, so the original, one of the very first state flags of Florida had this motto on it called "Let Us Alone," which I always took to be, I almost kind of wanted that to be the title at some point of like a response to like stop making fun of us. But the phrase itself has some murky origins. Sure. It's kind of complicated, like much of everything else that I write in the book. Sort of a double meaning there, having a lot to do with Florida not originally wanting to join the Union and wanting to remain kind of an isolated free territory in a lot of ways, which I think speaks to maybe some of the Floridian sentiment that still exists today.
Yeah, there's some complexity to it, as you say. If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Rachel Knox. She's talking about her new book, Anywhere Else, Essays on Florida. You can join the conversation if you've got some thoughts of your own about Florida and what it means to be Floridian, 813-755-6562, or a question for Rachel. You can also email us, floridamatters@wusf.org. All right, so I didn't read this in order. I kind of sort of pinballed around a little bit. One of the essays I particularly enjoyed was you write about Eileen Warnos, and it's a terrible, tragic story, but you've also got some fantastic description there of A1A. I wondered if you could read another little passage. This is from page 48, and let me just find it here in my well-thumbed copy here. At this top, I've driven A1A dozens of times, if you wouldn't mind reading that passage.
Sure. I've driven A1A dozens of times. The long state highway begins in Key West and winds all the way up to Amelia Island, the Atlantic Ocean's endless blue flickering in and out of view through the passenger side window. It's dotted with endless condos, beach houses, bait shops, tourist traps, and shitty little bars like the last resort every few miles. A1A passes through Miami Beach with its throngs of off-duty influencers, then winds along the brain-dead suburbs of Hollywood and the gilded, evil streets of Palm Beach. These streets turn into avenues, branching into wide driveways where the New York expats of Boca Raton park their luxury hatchbacks. Motorists along A1A with their eyes to the skies can spot the Kennedy Space Center beyond the broken-down fruit stands strewn across the highway as they continue north, above which billionaires launch themselves into the future. It continues along the weed-scented shores of Cocoa Beach, the last bastion of the puka shell necklace. I like to take a long last look at the young bodies arcing their surfboards over the glittering sea foam before the highway carries me deep into the past.
And so this kind of resonated with me because I've spent a bit of time, driving up and down A1A, and it is really kind of like you get to see pretty much every aspect of Florida, right? You get to see the highs and lows if you make it all the way down to Miami, the sort of glittering mansions and the the glamour of the beaches there, but also some of the more seedy sides of it. And the space program too, what could be more futuristic and kind of aspirational than that? But at the same time, you're writing about this kind of tragedy, like this person's life. What was it that made you want to write about Eileen Wuornos, and why did you kind of frame it up like that?
Yeah, she's someone that I've been fascinated with for most of my life. I remember even, as a young person, kind of hearing her story in the background or periphery, but not really knowing what was going on. And then when I got older, I just couldn't get her out of my head. And then the movie Monster came out, which was, Charlize Theron playing Eileen, nominated for an Oscar and winning an Oscar for this portrayal of this woman. And, Charlize was this beautiful, glamorous woman who had to wear all these prosthetics. But Eileen always felt so familiar to me as this type of Florida woman that kind of resembled, family members of mine. And just looking at pictures of her and the way she was depicted in the movie just kind of chafed a little bit. And I started looking into her story more and more, and especially as I had my own experiences with some of the violence that Eileen lived through. I found out a lot more about how her crimes were committed, and really that she was a victim in a lot of ways of assault and violence. And I just felt like a kinship with her that I couldn't shake. I became a little obsessed. And learning that most of her crimes, the murders that she committed, took place on A1A, this stretch near Daytona, really made me think about the time I had spent on that same stretch, and it just felt like a natural parallel.
Yeah, we've got a caller actually. Aramis, I believe, is calling. Emerus, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, but you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Hi, Rachel. I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait to read your essays. I was wondering if there was an essay that was particularly difficult to write, maybe the most difficult to write.
Thanks for your call.
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's an essay called Deserter in the book, which was really difficult for me to write for a couple of reasons. One, on just a technical level, the form was the hardest for me to figure out. I couldn't quite tell if I wanted it to be in first person or how much outside material to bring in. A lot of the essays use pop culture, touchstones, media, art, music, etc., kind of alongside my own story. And that one uses the Bible, and I was a little trepidatious, I guess, about using such loaded material. And it delves into my own experience with some heavy subjects and reproductive rights in the state of Florida, which is a really important subject to me. So I really wanted to get it right. I just really wanted to make sure that I was telling that story the most honest, the most true way that I could. I also was worried about how it would be received by people. I had a feeling people might have conflicting ideas about it, especially my mom, who is a character in that story, a real person who frames some of the ideas. And so that one was a little terrifying to write. But I feel now very proud of that one. And my mom has read it, and she still loves me. So I think it all turned out okay.
Wow. Well, Rachel, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for coming and sharing a bit of your writing, and congratulations on the book. It's fantastic. It's it's a ride. It takes you in a lot of different places. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, tomorrow on Florida Matters, live and local, how is the ongoing war in Iran impacting the airline industry? We'll talk about how oil price spikes can affect domestic travel. We can join the conversation Tuesday at noon. That's our show for today. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters. Engineers Jackson Harp and Gio Garvin. Jackson composed our theme music, and Warren Buckholtz handled the video today. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Watch on WSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you at 12 noon tomorrow.
The rent is too high, and the cost of owning a home is out of reach for many. I'm Marco Werman. Next week on the show, we go from continent to continent to hear about the challenges of making housing affordable. Our series kicks off next time on The World.
You can hear The World at 3 o'clock after Here and Now, which is next. You're listening to WUSF 89.7 Tampa, winner of the 2025